welcome along, and thank you for joining today and for showing interest in the work that we're doing in Research Data Scotland to make access to data simpler, faster, and while maintaining a trustworthiness in the use of data. And if you don't know me, I'm Roger Halliday. I'm the Chief Executive of Research Data Scotland, and I'll just do a little intro today. In fact, sorry, before I kind of hand over to some of my colleagues that will talk through the ways that we are actually trying to make that ambition real. Neha, we're going to start sharing our presentation, and what we're going to do today, because this is it's a user and partner forum, so it's a space for dialogue. So please do bring your questions either in the chat or by raising your hand, and we'll also do some polls as well. So there's a way to feed in through that. And what we're going to do, this is the agenda for today. We'll stop at the end of each part of the agenda to take questions. So feel free to keep putting those through, because I'm keen that if you've got something to comment or to ask, then this is your space to do it. So how we're gonna do this? I'll give a brief overview of some of the key themes from our business plan, and then we'll get into some of the detail around that. So Hugh Wallace will talk through some aspects of our user service, and as will Shona as well, and then we're going to sort of hand over to Nora, who'll talk about working with the ADR Scotland, and then Katie will talk about public engagement, and then there'll just be a little bit more time if we need it for general kind of Q&A and reflections before we wrap up. And the only other thing to say is that we're planning to record this, just as some people have said that they're not able to make it today, but they're keen to catch up through that recording. So yeah, let's just start off then, just on a couple of minutes on our business plan. Really, as I expect you will know, that we can't do what we're doing alone in Research Data Scotland. We don't want to do what we're doing alone. We want to absolutely be working with a whole range of people that are on this call and beyond, both users and partners. So the business plan is to give us an indication very much of what we're doing in the next year and then subsequent years, both for users so that they can see the direction and when things are likely to happen, but also for our partners to make sure that we're clear about how we're going to be working together over the next year. And starting from 2022 and where we are, I would say that Research Data Scotland officially kind of came together at the end of 2021. So 2022 was really a year where we sort of got the organisation ready to make some significant change. So that was about sort of a bit of organisation set up in terms of our board and the people that you'll be hearing from today all joined during 2022. But then, once people had started, we were able to get into that, looking at the end-to-end user journey and looking at how data is governed, and to then set out what we think an improvements to that system look like, and that's absolutely coming through developing relationships with partners, with users across Scotland, and with organisations across the UK, and then where that takes us into 2023 then is our focus, and our relentless focus is going to continue to be on reducing the time and effort from researchers in data access. And this year in 2023 we need to be seen, and we will make inroads in terms of shifting the dial on what that looks like. And there's lots of different interdependent steps on getting there. And I mentioned I'll pass to Hugh and then to Shona to talk through Hugh about how we're shaping services, and then Shona about how we're making data management and the flow and holding of data more efficient. So that's our number one focus for the coming year. The second thing, Nada, do you mind just moving on to So the second thing, well, you see, that's the end of the picture here. The second thing that I'd been mentioning is around the moving into an operational delivery space. So, and Nora will mention this a bit later, is that we're working on behalf of the Scottish Government in the Administrative Data Research Scotland programme. So we're moving from just about focusing on how do we help others to improve the system for access to data, to actually focusing on how we organise and source and bring data together and curate that through the ADR programme. And in collaboration with the Scottish Government, we'll focus on broadening the range of data that we have, particularly around children and kind of other non-health sources. But also, we're working with partners in the healthcare space as well to secure access from GPs, widening prescribing data, and taking steps towards making other health data, particularly NHS laboratories data and genomics data, available as well. Though those things will definitely take a lot of time, given the work that needs to go on there. The third theme that I wanted to bring out was about partnership. So I mentioned earlier on that we can't be doing this alone. So this year, one of our focuses is getting into those formal arrangements with partners, really working on crystallizing the respective roles that we each play in improving the research, the service to researchers and to data controllers, whilst reducing collective effort. So as all the changes that we'll be talking about later come into effect, we've got to make sure that that's going to work with all our partners. So it's so getting into those formal agreements is important. And then the final thing is doing more to make the system sustainable in future. So about sourcing investment and just sort of thinking about other sort of financial issues, and the exactly how we partner with organisations, particularly on the research side. And in each of those areas, those four areas, we can't do this alone, and we won't do it alone. So absolutely, if you're one of our partners, you know that there's an absolute commitment to working with national partners around the ADR Scotland programme, the development of our new the services, and public engagement as well, and also absolutely working with the regional partners on data federation, industry access, information governance, and other aspects. And I think through how we do this, and the areas that we're focusing on are really in 2023 going to start to move us towards a faster access to data. But it's not going to be completely done in 2023, and this is this is where I think we get into some of the greater detail about this. But before I do, is there anything anybody wanted to raise with me? First of all, there's other opportunities obviously during the session today, but I can't see any hands. I'll at this point then hand over to Hugh to give a service user update. You?
Pressed the wrong button and turned my camera off rather than unmuting my microphone. So apologies for that. I am just going to share my screen. Just give me a second. So hopefully everybody is able to now see my introduction slide. I can't see anybody else, so there'll be an opportunity to ask questions if there's anything that comes up in the chat just at the end of this segment. So just to quickly introduce myself, I'm Hugh Wallace. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Research Data Scotland. And I'm just going to be talking really for the next 10 minutes or so about the development of the Researcher Access Service. So we've been talking publicly really for the last 6 months about the Researcher Access Service. And in that time, we've been working closely, as Roger said, with our partner organisations and other stakeholders to kind of formulate our thinking around about the service. And excitingly, we're now getting into the delivery stage. So really going to spend the next, just move my slide on. Oh, good, having issues. What I'm going to cover today, this morning, is to recap on the aims of the Researcher Access Service. For those of you who haven't heard about it prior to now, I'll just spend a little bit of time talking about what it is we're trying to achieve. I want to cover some information about information governance and user research and testing, both of which are really kind of cornerstones of the way we're trying to deliver services and are key kind of underpinning factors when it comes to our service delivery. And then I'll talk about some of the digital developments and some of the things that are well on the way to being available and changes that will be kind of taking effect in the next few months. So again, as I say, kind of just to kind of recap on the problems that we're trying to solve and kind of what we're trying to do with the Researcher Access Service. There's been a lot of analysis and research undertaken over the last 1 to 2 years, which kind of clearly points to some of the issues that there are in terms of the access to data. We know that there's not one clear set of steps in terms of the application process and the access process when it comes to data. Only parts of the overall journey are digitized and very little in terms of the researcher end of things. So kind of when people are coming to us for access to data, there very little is actually available online at this point in time. We know that researchers often need to work across multiple organisations, that there are legacy systems, so technology that's not necessarily been designed for the job that it's now doing, so it's not necessarily fit for purpose. And with legacy systems often come legacy processes. So there's been the introduction of workarounds, manual processing, where ideally you'd want to be automating and doing things in a more joined up way. Again, kind of reflecting the multiple organisations point, we know that advice and guidance is fragmented and inaccessible. It's not necessarily in formats that everybody is going to be able to use, and we want to be able to join that up much better. And one kind of underpinning factor, which is important, is that people don't necessarily know that the data is there. So there's lots of different websites offering lots of different data, but there's not kind of a clear picture of what data is available and how it can be used. So the little quote at the bottom right of the screen has come from a recent round of user research and kind of highlights just some of the frustrations that people have. So lengthy and bureaucratic process, difficult, challenging, some like clearly nonplussed. So all of this kind of comes out with project delays and wasted public benefit. What we've been proposing in terms of the future data access journey, I'm keen to point out this isn't something that's going to be kind of coming on board absolutely now, but this is kind of what we're building up towards over the next 1 to 2 years. And it's a six-stage process. We're framing it in a sort of linear way from discovery through to outputs, but really kind of the key stages that we're trying to work through in terms of service delivery. So how people discover data, the upfront information that's presented, a single point of entry for users, how they're able to inquire, and kind of what the teams are that are sitting behind that inquiry process, a fully digitized application process, and then the means to track and get feedback on process. We want to kind of automate as much as we can in terms of triaging information, and making sure that there's kind of a secure and robust way of accessing data, or well, there is a secure and robust way of accessing data, but just that we would want to kind of make sure that that's as seamless as possible. And then when it comes to the outputs, make sure that we are talking about successes and demonstrating case studies. So that's kind of a snapshot really of kind of the end-to-end journey that we are working towards. But kind of, I suppose, stepping back from that, there's been a lot of emphasis, I think, on getting the plumbing right. And there's a famous plumber. It's very difficult to find pictures of famous plumbers. Here's one. In terms of getting the plumbing right, we're looking at kind of digital principles that we're trying to embed in every part of our service delivery. So making sure that everything is secure by design, so that it's robust, that it's scalable, that the infrastructure that we're building is flexible for our future needs, that things are accessible for all. So accessibility, usability, and compliance are real cornerstones of our delivery. When it comes to being open, accountable, and focused on reuse, we want to prioritize the use of recognized digital delivery standards and best practice. User centricity is a key part of what we're doing, and we want to be able to understand the real problems users are facing, and make sure that we're focused on solving those. And when it comes to continuous improvement, it's not just about delivering something and hoping for the best. It's about the ongoing investment to improve services once they are live. As I mentioned, information governance is a critical factor in terms of everything that we're delivering. I'm using the word underpinning a lot, but I really kind of believe we need to think about how things like IG are threaded into everything that we're doing in terms of service delivery, and that focus on how we manage and share information or data appropriately is really really important. And in the last 6 months, there's been a lot of positive developments in terms of how we're looking and prioritizing IG. We have a new team in place. We have an IG manager and a team now kind of delivering some of the key elements of that. There are draft arrangements in place with Public Health Scotland, Scottish Government, and National Records of Scotland, and we're working to finalise those. And that's going to mean there's a particular focus on how we can fast track applications for certain types of data. We're also making sure that we're engaging with others like Health Data Research UK and the Office of National Statistics to understand best practice, and so that what we're doing kind of feeds into their processes, but that we can also understand some of the live services that they offer and how IG is part of that. And the connection with the Information Commissioner's Office is a really important factor as well, and something that we are starting to look at from this point forward, and making sure that we base a lot of the material that we are producing on ICO's best practice. When it comes to the user research and testing, I've just gone 1 point forward. There's 2 streams happening at the moment. We're looking at the sort of in-depth testing of content, of design, of layouts, and the accessibility when it comes to the website design and build that we're undertaking, and the forms that people will be populating. And when it comes to the end-to-end application process, making sure that we're understanding some of the real pain points and where there's kind of clear user needs and opportunities. as part of the delivery that we're doing at the moment, we have recently undertaken a fresh round of user research. We've been talking to over 20 internal and external users of services that are either kind of closely related or are kind of in the same kind of sector as the services that we're going to be offering, and really focusing on getting some actionable insights so that we can take the information that we've got in the form of user needs and translate that into the services that we're delivering. So the purple boxes just show some of the insights that we've been gaining from that process, and we've undertaken sort of some early round user testing, and that's going to be factored into the digital delivery as we move forward and thereafter. So just talk very briefly about some of the digital development, some of the real stuff that's starting to come together. We've been sort of branding the digital developments at the moment as our phase 1, and there are future phases which will kind of build us out into kind of the full end-to-end service. But we're looking at launching the new website, the new RDS website in early May, and that will be a good signifier of some of the changes to come. We'll have an online inquiry form for data sets for the first time that we can direct people to, and will mean that they no longer have to make use of the Word document that's part of the current IDRIS setup. We'll be embedding our metadata catalogue, the catalogue of data sets that you can apply for via Research Data Scotland as part of the site as a whole. There will be new and improved content to support users and simplify their journey. So really kind of focusing in on the utility of content rather than just kind of populating pages. So that's really kind of designed to be as helpful as it possibly can be. And we have a new technology platform that the website is based on, which will make it much simpler to develop new features and new content and give us the flexibility that we need as we move forward. We're also, as part of this phase of work, prototyping the full application process. So the online inquiry form takes us part way there, but the full application process is something that's a lot more in depth and detailed, and will take time to develop. So again, that's going to be very much a user-centered exercise. And the technology options for the end-to-end service. The primary focus at the moment is the front end, the website, but one of the big challenges ahead is making sure that we've got the right technology in place in terms of the case management, the customer relationship management that we'll need as the kind of bedrock for our future service development. So I'll just show you kind of some kind of designs as they are starting to roll out. All of the text is not finalized, but we're starting to kind of move into a phase where you can visualize some of the key components that will be part of the website design, and how some of that's going to kind of look in terms of the modular approach that we're taking in terms of the service as a whole. The metadata catalogue, as I mentioned, is going to be embedded onto our site. At the moment, it's sitting slightly off to one side, so it's an integrated experience. We'll be focusing on the Public Health Scotland, NRS, SG and ADR Scotland data sets. We're going to try and we will be updating the field descriptions and language to make it much clearer and simpler for users to use, and having some proper analysis features in there as well. So that is kind of a whistle stop of what's been happening recently in terms of the digital team. And I shall look for a way to stop sharing my slides in case people have questions. Does anyone have any questions?
I think there's one that's coming from Andrea.
Yes, hello, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks very much. This is really welcome news to us. Just a little bit about my background. I work in Glasgow Dental School, and we were actually part of the pilot for the National Safe Haven back in 2015. So we've done sort of a lot of work and shared a lot of the frustrations that you've put up front. So it's really, really welcome move. The one question, and maybe you'll deal with it later, but I thought it was important that I raise it at this stage, is that since 2015, we've obviously been using the National Safe Haven, working remotely at Glasgow University, and obviously during the pandemic, working at home. We are linking education data to health data to we're evaluating the big national Child Smile programme, so it's quite a large data linkage, lots of components. The linkage of the education and the health data, over the last 6 months, we've been sort of hearing murmurings around the removal of education data from National Safe Haven and having to analyse those data within physical safe havens, safe pods, and I guess we get an answer from anyone as to whether this is going ahead, but I think it would just to be flag up at this stage that it would be such a retrograde step for us having to use physical safe havens, safe pods, etc. To carry out this analysis. We're also concerned about the infrastructure for this in Glasgow, as we at the moment have 4 or 5 researchers daily doing PhDs, various different things on the safe haven, that actually to share 2 or 3 rooms with a whole bunch of other people we know at Glasgow are using safe havens would be just really concerning. So as I say, it's rumours. I've just heard it from colleagues at Idris who I work quite closely with in this process, and again, as I say, it was just to raise that slight flag. If that is going to be the way forward, it would cause lots of problems.
I don't know, is anyone able to comment on that at the moment?
Not in particular. I know that Andrea, I know you're right. I know Idris have been thinking about exactly how that operates, and ultimately this is down to what the owners of data say. But I suppose my view is just exactly the same as you've expressed, which is that this has been working for now 3 years, and actually it's worked pretty well. And there hasn't been any incidents, as far as I'm aware, of any problems with that. So, but I haven't got a definitive answer for you, and I think it's just it's still on being considered by Idris. I don't know whether then. Jenny, whether you've got anything to sort of come in on the back of that specifically, or is it something different?
No, sorry, it was another question.
Okay, but maybe what we'll do, Andrea, is we'll just we'll take that away and get a definitive kind of view on where that's at for you.
Thanks so much. I mean, we have been advocating everywhere that we can, that we feel that we can in terms of this. We think there's actually issues with discrimination as well in terms of people with mobility issues and not being able to get to the physical safe havens. And I think it's something Scottish Government particularly will really need to think carefully about. But I very much appreciate, and I appreciate the work you're doing. It's really, really welcome. Thank you.
That's a really good point. Jenny.
Hi, thanks. My name's Jenny Johnson. I am the Information Governance Manager for one of the local safe havens. I was interested to see the process flow, and one of my questions was the process, the inquiry goes into the national. Is the expectation that the local safe havens follow that process as well? Because I would be really keen to see a consistent approach across Scotland. And, there's separate local processes across the safe havens, and we really should have one consistent approach. And I just wondered how the local safe havens have been brought into that conversation, because at this point I haven't been brought into that conversation, so I'm just asking how that's going to pan out.
Thanks, Jenny. I think the focus has been on the National Safe Haven, as you see, in kind of the processes in terms of the information governance that supports that. I think with a view to being, trying to make things as consistent as possible in terms of the different arrangements with different data owners and the agreements in place. I think there are useful conversations starting about how some of the kind of national ambitions for IG and how it supports data access are starting to kind of intertwine with some of the local safe havens. And I think we're probably at a point where there is useful information to share about how we can unify approaches, because obviously there are already a number of processes that are already taking place at that local and regional level. So I guess from the service delivery perspective, we've been trying to do things from a minimum viable product perspective to try and make sure that we're kind of learning as we go and not saying we have the answers to everything up front. But there's going to be a point in time where we absolutely need to kind of broaden that out to the other kind of areas that are being covered via IG.
Okay,
I don't know if anybody else wants to.
Yeah, sorry, I was just about to say, I think as well, I think locally across all the safe havens, we do have some, I'm not saying again, some good practice, some bad practice, some learnings, and it'd be good just to bring that into the national process and learn from each other locally as well. Just an idea. I just thought maybe there could be an IG group, nationally that could sit and look at these processes together.
Yeah, that's certainly. So I'm sorry, Hugh. This is put across. As Jenny knows, I always do. It was just to say that that's certainly something that we're looking to get in place sooner rather than later, because obviously it's important to have that collaboration from the regional safe havens to get the feedback, to think about that kind of consistency of process across the piece, because it makes absolute sense. So certainly from my point of view, that's something I'll be involved in. So I would probably just say wait for the email dropping in soon.
Great, Kate, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Kate. I just noticed Stella's put a question in the chat about public consultation, and just to say, in terms of the user testing, the user research that we've been doing, there's kind of a semi-public element to that, because we're outreaching to researchers and not those that are kind of working within any of the organisations. But in terms of kind of wider public engagement, there's the team, Layla, Katie, our new public engagement manager, that are also going to be looking at kind of how we make sure that public are engaged and feedback's taken on board as we develop the service. I think, in terms of what we will be going live with in May, that will be the starting point, and we'll be really kind of trying to make sure that we get those feedback loops in place so that we can make improvements to the service and make sure that we're taking both the public and kind of researcher viewpoints on board as things go on. And I think if there's no further questions, that I am now passing over to Shona.
Yes, thanks, Hugh. My name's Shona, and I'm a senior project manager in the data team at RDS, and I'm here to talk to you about the Alliance Technical Group, which is sort of newer project that we've started in the data team, which is kind of complementary to all the work that the digital team have made great inroads in terms of the front-facing process for researchers. This process very much focuses on the delivery of data. So how is it stored and linked and made available to researchers? So Jenny, this will be of interest to you. So the Alliance Technical Group has been established to review the current processes of how this is done, and then to look for opportunities to improve the back-end processes around data delivery in order to make it, I suppose, make it more efficient. And that would mean faster for researchers to go from approval to accessing the data, but also to make sure that the system is robust enough to be able to scale the number of projects that go through it. So those are the key drivers for it. And we've established this technical group for that includes the partner organisations that are involved in that process for the National Safe Haven. So that includes the ADR team at Public Health Scotland, EPCC, National Records of Scotland, ADR Scotland, Scottish Government and RDS. Sounds like a huge team, there's 10 of us. And that process kicked off in January, so reasonably recently. And really delighted to be able to tell you about the progress that we've made and some opportunities to get involved as well. Neha, can you skip a slide for me? So really important to this work is to make sure that we are maintaining compliance with the 5 SACE and the alignment with the principles of data for research and linkage with the Scottish Government. Ultimately, the data providers need to be comfortable that the process is robust. But also we're looking at how do we create a sort of default way for those for that data to be linked and stored in the National Safe Haven, particularly for health and non-health data. So for those of you who have been working in this way for a while, you will know that the way that this is managed is different, whether it's health or non-health data. And also we're anticipating that over time, the number of data sets that are ingested into the National Safe Haven ready for linking will increase. So that will change the profile of the types of projects that are being stored and linked. So with that in mind, how do we make the process more efficient so that we can deliver more research projects and do that in a more timely manner for researchers? And really that's the remit of this technical group, is to look at what the technical possibilities are. Now, there are lots of considerations in that, obviously, including the implications for information governance and data controllers. So as part of that process, in fact, so the work to date we've done really is spent time mapping the as-is processes for the different types of projects that go through the National Safe Haven and are linked. We've worked with all of those partners to identify where in their own processes they've identified blockers, things which slow down the process but don't necessarily add an awful lot of value. And we've identified where all those are. We've then started talking early stages about potential changes that could be made, what some of the pros and cons of those might be, and the implications there are for implementation. So it's been very much a discovery phase, which is focused on the process itself. Now, the next phase of the project, having looked at some of the early opportunities, is to do a process of engagement. So we feel it's important to engage with kind of all of the stakeholders that are involved in this. So that includes hosting a public panel to understand public perceptions about what those potential changes could be. To speak to researchers. So as part of the wonderful work that the digital team have done in discovery with the researchers, we've included questions that are related to data linkage and storage in those, but also interested in whether there's researchers who would like to get slightly more involved in the technical detail of it, because there's lots of technical detail to it. But I know that there are researchers that find it important about how that linkage is done, because it directly impacts the quality of their work. So we don't have any formal participation at the moment, but if you indicate your interest, because I'm just about to do some polls, if you indicate your interest in having a conversation about that, then we'll reach out and have a conversation about that. So that's public and researchers. Jenny mentioned the regional safe havens. We do have you in our engagement plan. We just don't quite have the how yet. So it's April, May time that we're looking at engaging. So we do want to understand what this work and the proposed changes are and the implications that that might have for alignment, and also whether there's any input that regional safe havens could have into assessing the options. Then there's obviously also the kind of information governance piece and engaging with data controllers, and we're working with our colleagues internally around looking at what does that information governance steering group look like, and can we use that as one of the platforms for engaging them and what the changes mean. That's the key components of it. I don't have an insights document like Hugh has yet, but there will be one. I think some of the key takeaways of the process so far is there are opportunities to improve the system. It's going to be very much finding the right balance for each of the stakeholders in feeling comfortable with those changes. Next slide. So we have some questions for researchers with some polls. So I'm going to invite you to participate. I'm assured that this will go smoothly. There we go. So if you are a researcher, do this from your own perspective. If you are a partner organisation, feel free to jump in and give us your opinion about what you think researchers feel from your engagement with them. Second question that we have is, what is important, assuming there is, about data and linkage and storage in the National Safe Haven from your perspective? What are the ones that are important to you? And you can click more than one. And then finally, if you're a researcher and you would like to participate in a conversation about the detail about how this is currently done and some potential changes, please indicate your interest here, and the system will let us know who you are. So we'll come back out to you. Now, I just want to indicate I didn't participate, so it didn't tell me the answer. So I'm wondering if one of my wonderful colleagues could give me some results.
I can hop in. So on the first question at the moment, we've got 67% very important, 33% moderately important, which means 0% not important, which is good news for us.
Good news.
On the second question, the joint most popular ones were that the data is held safely and public trust in the National Safe Haven. And the others were sort of equal, but a little bit lower than that.
Great.
Yeah, that's the headlines.
That's fantastic. So I do want to thank partners who are on the call who've participated in this process. We have done our best to make it a collaborative process and make sure that each of the partners has been able to identify from their perspective what the current system, how the current system works, and what could change. And overall, it's been a really positive process. And so I'm delighted with the collaboration that's happening with the partners, and really looking forward now to engaging slightly wider about this particular topic. So I welcome any questions at this point.
Sure, I can see one question in the chat from Archie Campbell.
Hey Archie, do you see a difference between consented and unconsented data? Feels very much like an IG question, but I think when we're discussing the data in the National Safe Haven, really we're talking about the kind of pipeline process, and the approvals process is very much on the IG side of things. So that would very much be dealt with on that side. Roger, did you have something to add to that?
No, only that the vast majority of our data is unconsented, though will typically be of the form where it's collected for one thing, and and people will be informed that it can be used for research. So typically we don't deal in consented data, or we haven't done so far, Archie. Was there a particular sort of thought that went behind your question?
Yeah, my follow-up point is, if we want to make this administrative data available for linkage to research cohort data that is consented, where is that going to happen? If that's going to happen in the safe haven, then the research study data has to be uploaded into the safe haven. So have you considered the technical difficulties of using genomic data, for example? If you've got, say, a genomic sequence data for one person is about 300 gigabytes, so three people is 1 terabyte. We think in about 5 years' time we might have sequence data for 30,000 people. That's what, about 10 petabytes worth of data. Is that all going into the safe haven?
So I'd say with that specific question that we're at a very early stage of thinking about genomic data in working alongside some colleagues in Scottish Government and elsewhere around that, and that's clearly one of the things that we'll need to work through. So I don't have an answer for you right now, but yeah, it's a tricky one, and certainly there's a lot of learning from the work on medical imaging data, where that's already a significant part of the day is keeping that updated by moving data around. So as the data sets get bigger, this is only going to be a more significant challenge.
Yeah, and I think just the Public Health Scotland data sets are going to start including these huge data files eventually, as the more and more genetic sequencing goes on, it becomes more of a diagnostic tool. So yeah, you've got a problem waiting in store about 2 years down the line, I think, on that one.
Yeah.
From our point of view, just I'm with Generation of Scotland. We've got sort of 20,000 consented people that we try to do data linkage for. And we come across the bureaucratic difficulties of actually getting access to various data sets all the time. So that's why I'm interested in what you're doing with your whole metadata catalog. It's maybe a conversation of a different meeting, though, I think.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would add to that, Archie, is that we're working with a program called ADR UK, which is looking at different models for how to bring data together from different safe havens, and that might be one that might lead to a solution on this. But I think there's a long way to go.
Just one follow-up question in terms of working with different safe havens. Are you just talking about safe havens within Scotland or the UK as a whole? For example, say a Sale data bank.
So there's the specific project between the safe haven, the national safe haven in Scotland, and Sale as part of the ADR UK programme.
Yeah, good.
For example. And then Stephen, you asked a question. What are the opportunities identified so far? Do you mind just elaborating on that, just so that we can be as helpful as possible?
Yeah, thanks.
Sure.
Curious about from the Alliance Technical Group, you mentioned that this current phase around discovery, that there were multiple opportunities identified. I'm curious to hear what some of those are.
I don't want to go into too much detail because we're still at the early stages of that. But there are, I guess, the key areas that are being looked at. One is, how do we treat data sets that are in the safe haven? Because at the moment they're kind of all treated as their own kind of entities, if that makes sense. So different holdings have different processes around them, and we're looking at what would it look like if we treated data once it's gone into the national safe haven as being part of the same it's part of the same infrastructure, and therefore the processes would be similar. So it's not so much of a technical change. Other things that are being looked at is linking methodology. So that's another area that we're looking at. And then the other one that we're looking at is it is about currently how data is separated and saved within the national safe haven. So they're the broad areas that we're looking at. But I am going to invite Nora in. She might say something more specific.
No, I was just going to say that I think that we've identified, and Stephen, we had a conversation not so long ago, and I think it's clear that we need to ensure that the safe havens are involved in the conversations that we're having, because at this point we're sort of thinking about a national solution to we're talking about the national safe haven, but actually we need to make sure that we're sort of future proofing, that we're not setting up a new system anyway, but the sort of suggestions that we're making for the safe haven are going to be scalable in future, and that it's going to work with everything that's already happening across the regional safe havens. So we do intend to have a proper opportunity to talk about the opportunities and the barriers and the recommendation as we form that. So stay tuned for that one.
Thanks very much.
And given that there aren't any further questions or hands up, maybe that's the perfect segue, Nora, to updating around our work in partnership with the ADR Scotland programme.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks very much, Neha. So I think today I really wanted to start by just giving a little bit of context, I suppose, so that we're not seeing the ADR Scotland programme just sort of in a vacuum, but where that sits in with the context that everything else that we're doing. So Hugh spoke earlier about the Researcher Access Service and the work that we're doing around that. So if we could click on to the next slide. Really, I mean, I like talking about, we're kind of have the end-to-end researcher journey, which is very much what Hugh and colleagues are working on, making that kind of more seamless and simplified, streamlined and digitized where possible. And in this 6-stage journey, there's some nice words there that sort of look like, they're discrete areas of work, but there's a huge amount going on in the background in each of those. And as a data person, I suppose I'm particularly interested in the access side of things. And this Researcher Access Service works really well where there are, nice data sets kind of ready to go in the background, that we have built a portfolio of data sets within the safe haven, and that we're promoting the use and reuse of those data sets. So I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about that side of things today. I mean, there have been generally, there's an awful lot of sort of initiatives taking place. If we could go on to the next slide, around data for reuse. So just in case, I'm pretty sure that everybody knows what I'm talking about here, but just to make it explicit, I suppose, there is, in the bad old days, so much of research happened in the create and destroy model, so that you could spend months or even years getting data together, getting the permissions in place to access the data, figuring out how the data sets are going to be linked together and what data is going to be available. And once you've gotten your data, done your analysis and published your outputs, the data is deleted, and when another researcher wants to do a similar type of research, it's deleted. The data is no longer there, and you have to start from scratch. So that is a huge kind of a waste of effort, and we know that there is a move towards making as much data available for reuse as possible. So kind of two initiatives to talk about. We're all aware of the SAIL data bank, which is the best established, has been around since 2007 as that safe haven for both the health and administrative data set, and it takes about 12 weeks to access the data around that. So we're sort of hearing at the minute from some of the work that Hugh spoke about earlier, that it takes somewhere between about 6 to 24 months for people to access data in Scotland. So having 12 weeks in Wales is a pretty substantial improvement. And there's the ADR UK, the ESRC funded ADR UK work, which is trying to transform how researchers access that data, and making as much of the administrative data that's already being collected and created across the UK to be available proactively in a reusable way to better inform policy and decision making. So if we could move on to the next slide, ADR UK have, as again most people will be aware, have funded work across the UK in different areas. So the ADR Scotland programme has been ongoing for quite a while now, a partnership between the Scottish Government and the University of Edinburgh, making that data more available in Scotland. And there is already the portfolio of de-identified linkable data sets, which sit within the National Safe Haven, and that's delivered collaborative working through IDRIS, NRS, EPCC. One of the changes to this is that from April, RDS will also be commissioned to undertake some of the work around this, so working particularly on the ingest and curation side of things. So hopefully from a researcher perspective, that won't make you won't notice much of a difference, though hopefully we'll start to see kind of a ramping up in the number of data sets that are available. So the real shift here in making data available for reuse rather than in the kind of create and destroy model is that a lot of the hard work is done up front, so that rather than an individual researcher having to do this every time they have a research project process, we do it in a much more strategic way. So that sort of changes the burden of responsibility, I suppose, in terms of who has to get this done. But it also pushes us to think about what the system priorities are, and making sure that the data that we're spending our time and resources and money on trying to ingest are the ones that are kind of going to have the biggest bang for the buck, that are reusable or strategic priorities, that they're good quality data, that we can make the data available to us. So we're going to be working very closely with colleagues in Scottish Government, who will be continuing to work on the discovery side of things, and it's Research Data Scotland who are now going to be getting involved in actually ingesting that data into the safe haven and updating it, because, you know, as you're aware, the data sets that currently sit in the ADR infrastructure have been ingested, but they're yet to be updated for the first time. So we'll be getting involved in doing those updates and making sure that happens kind of as easily as possible. I think just I have one more slide really to talk about the COVID-19 holding as well. You know, this is one that had that kind of that was set up during the pandemic, and we know that this really works. I said that it takes about kind of somewhere from about 6 to 24 months for researchers to get access to their data. During the pandemic, it took about a month to access the data through the COVID-19 research database. So, you know, when the data sets are sitting ready to go, when there's a metadata catalog, you know, when all the right things are in place, it really does reduce the time it takes to access that data. And you know, and PHS colleagues have made this now available for the PHS owned data sets in the safe haven on a more sustainable footing. So we hope that some of the benefits that have accrued from the COVID-19 research database can also be done more sustainably across the whole system. So a lot of work to do. I've sort of said that as if, you know, it's all going to be done overnight, and that's certainly not the case. This is a long piece of work that'll take, but we'll be making sure to come back and talk about that as we go on, and updating more on the ADR Scotland piece of work as well. Any questions about that? I can see somebody's said something in the chat. Questions there?
I can't see any hands up on that, Nora, though. It's making sure that we've got a great portfolio of data sets is you know, clearly, to use Hugh's terminology, underpins a lot of what we do. So thanks for that. And right at the start, Stella mentioned about public engagement here, and so yeah, perhaps now's a perfect time to hand over to Katie, who can say a little bit about what we're doing on that front.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Katie Orsfield. I'm the new Public Engagement Manager with Research Data Scotland. I only started last month, so it's lovely to meet a lot of you today, even through our screens. Today I'm going to speak to you about the Public Engagement Fund. This is part of our three-pronged approach to public engagement, which you can see there. This includes directly involving members of the public, supporting networks of public engagement professionals, as well as wider public engagement. We've spoken a bit earlier, and I think Roger put in the chat, about our directly involving members of the public through our new joint panel with SCADA that we announced earlier this month. Today, I'm going to speak about the Public Engagement Fund, which is part of the third prong in widening our public engagement. Fund we announced in January 2023. We received over 30 applications, which was amazing. We'd originally assigned 40,000 for it, but the applications were of such high quality that we actually increased our total funding to 56,000 that we'll be distributing. I put the aims of the fund on the screen. As you can see, it's wider than just RDS's work. It's really about engaging people broadly with data, providing balanced information on data research, and speaking to new audiences and involving them in how their data is used and what we're up to, as well as the wider sector. I'm going to speak about the projects that we're going to be funding. We're actually publicly announcing it tomorrow, so please don't share this information wider than this forum, but we thought, since we had you all here today, that we would give you a sneak peek of what's going to be happening. 9 projects. They're a real mix of audience location, trying to make sure that we're sort of reaching across Scotland, really nationally, that it's a mix of type of audience as well. It's relevant for everyone, so we wanted the Public Engagement Fund to reflect that. Also a mix of the type of activities and topic focuses. So I'll just quickly go through them just now and give you a little summary about what we'll be doing. There'll be more information coming up as we work through the projects that we'll be sharing on social media and the website. So CoClan will be creating an online self-led course all about demystifying data. This will include topics around open data, and that will be open. It'll be online, so it's open to everyone across Scotland. So a really great way to reach a good number of people. Grampian Regional Equality Council are going to be running workshops with minority ethnic community groups in Aberdeen. This will feed into their wider work, How Fair is North East Scotland, which is a resource really focused on inclusion and inequalities. So this project will bring new voices into that resource as well. How we'll be doing a project taking place in high SMID areas of Edinburgh, introducing people to data research, giving people a voice and an interest who might not encounter it normally, and training people to be citizen researchers, so getting people really hands-on with the idea of data science. We will be focusing on drug harm prevention research, so running focus groups with people who use drugs to explore their perceptions of the use of their data in research. Out of this, they'll be co-creating a stop-motion animation and also a register of people that will be interested in research in the future. So a really fantastic potential for future work there as well. University of Edinburgh, all reaching different audiences around Scotland. So one is about cultural probes into mental illness. They'll be running workshops with people who have lived experience of mental health, and will use art and creativity to explore the theme of data research in those workshops, and host a small exhibition at the end of the outputs of that as well. of Edinburgh is about data and biological research. This one, they're creating a game-based interactive for researchers to interact directly with members of the public, including young people. They're actually going to work with partner organisations on this to reach audiences, specifically in the Highlands, as well as Edinburgh and Glasgow. So again, getting a national reach and lots of voices involved. Is Generation Scotland, which has been mentioned earlier on the call, where the team will create resources to encourage discussion around data research. This one has a real focus on young, rural and LGBTQIA+ audiences, people who may not necessarily be involved in data research at the moment. So we'll do this by attending large-scale events such as Pride and the Royal Highland Show as well to speak about data. Is focusing on data linkage, again, the theme of today. They're looking to co-create resources, a resource with young people, teachers, carers and parents on data linkage. So during these sessions, they'll be discussing the use of data, as well as barriers to self-reporting and what data linkage is and how important it is as well. This co-created resource will then be able to be shared amongst wider audiences as well. University of Glasgow, there's a focus on perinatal mental health. This is building on existing paper copies of a timeline. They'll instead be co-creating an animation video that will be able to share more widely and will be launched at a special event. As I say, we're going to be publicly announcing these tomorrow. So once we do, please keep an eye out for it on social media and on our website, and help us share that more widely as well. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks very much, Katie. And yeah, really good variety of projects that will hopefully help us to think more broadly about exactly how we get the greatest value from spend around public engagement in future. Now, I can't see any hands up there, because this well, in that case, yeah, completely agree with the comment from Jenny there. Has to be the center of what we do. So this is just a sort of final opportunity based upon the things that you heard from me about our sort of important themes of improving sort of a relentless focus on timing and reducing the complexity and effort of data access from Hugh around how we might go and do that, and from Shona on the changes that we're making around how data is held and flows, from a focus on moving to operational delivery through supporting the ADR Scotland programme that Nora mentioned, or anything around how we're working with the public to do that Katie said. Is there anything that anybody wanted to pick up that we haven't touched on yet? Jenny.
Hi, thanks. It was just one of the things that I have noticed locally, and I wondered if RDS are going to get involved in this, but education for our research community and our public who are involved is so important. And I know that, you know, if you're doing a project, you need to do your MRC training or your ADR training to gain that access. But once people do that training, I think there's another step and another responsibility that we have as local safe havens and the national safe haven around just keeping that education up and that communication around. And I think it also cuts down on significant events. Now, significant events can be really small. It could be a break in process. It could be a data incident. But I found that a lot of the significant events that we come across, it's down to just reminding the research community of their responsibilities and that education piece. And that's one bit that we're trying to do locally, but it would be good if we could do it on a national level.
That's you know, that's a really good suggestion, Jenny. I know that part of our involvement in the ADR Scotland programme is around training, but it's not a significant part. And you know, this is something where sort of collaboration seems to be quite important. That with sort of led by Layla, we've set up a steering group for the safe haven network across Scotland, and it's maybe something that we should consider through that at the appropriate time. Later, I know that we've got a lot of things that we need to do through that group, but let's go and sort of test that with people. Hugh, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to Jenny's point, you know, a lot of what we're trying to do at the moment is improve the advice and guidance that's there to support that. I guess that for the first time researcher or for somebody that is relatively new, but I think that's a really good point about how we can make sure that is also geared up towards you know, those that are either returning or just to generally improve kind of the knowledge and information available. And I guess it kind of hooks back into the continuous improvement side of things, is to make sure that we are, you know, testing the water and making sure that the resources that we're certainly publishing are working both for the service that we offer, but perhaps more broadly for the research community at large. So, no, I think it's a really well-made point, Jenny.
Great, thank you.
Layla, did you want to?
Only briefly, just building on what everyone, what both have just said. But Jenny, I just wanted to thank you for your comments, because actually it's prompted a few thoughts that I think Roger and Hugh have touched on. But also, I mean, we have the Scottish Safe Havens steering group, which is the national and the regionals. But actually, as well as what has already been suggested around kind of training, and we'll take that away and have a think about it. But also maybe there is something about bringing people together across the regional safe havens and the national, because obviously not everyone will have sight of that. And what we found actually is there's not a lot of fora for just bringing people together who are doing similar jobs and similar roles. And just so there's a few things there I think we'll take to the steering group, and also about coming back to this group as well, just to update more broadly on what we're doing across the safe havens. So thank you.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks for raising that, Jenny, and to Judy for making the suggestion in the chat about the steps that we could take in to support good sort of practice by researchers. So I think digitizing the process can enable that sort of that sort of thing. So it's a helpful suggestion, Judy. Thank you very much. I can't see any other hands up, so I think we'll finish up there. So thank you very much to everybody that's come along, that's asked questions, that's fed in views. This isn't the only place you can do it, so if you didn't want to do it directly the meeting, feel free to get in touch with any of us about the things that you've heard, or in particular, as Shona mentioned, if you or any of your colleagues are happy to give us specific feedback about the things as we're developing, to make sure that they work as well as possible for users, then that would be fantastic. So enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, we'll catch up again at some point very soon. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye bye.